Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program at the crossroads of religion and life, a series highlighting the cultural and social interaction between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTVC. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg, pastor of Gethsemane Lutheran, and your host for today's program. America is growing older. The proportion and number of persons 65 years and older has grown and will continue to grow more rapidly than any other age group. As our community continues to grow older and to comprise a larger section of our population, what effects will our older population have on our community? And more importantly, how will our community meet the needs of our aging population? One effect of our aging population is the increased demand on healthcare services. Older adults are the heaviest users of health services, with 1 out of 5 older persons having at least a mild disability, and their chance of becoming disabled increases as they grow older. However, in spite of increased health problems and the need for health services, 80% of people over 65 are living independently in the community, while only 5% live in an institutional setting and 15% live in the community with some outside assistance. So how do we, you and I as a community, help meet the needs of our aging population? What resources are available to us to make decisions about institutionalized care or home health care? And with cutbacks in government funding for health care, the problems of loneliness and isolation of our older community, and the challenge of providing adequate care and assistance in independent living, what do we, as a community, need to help make life safe, comfortable, happy, and secure for our older adults? Joining us today on Austin Faith Dialogue to help us look and probe at those questions is Pat Rosenblad, Director, West Austin Caregivers; Harvey DeFord, volunteer with the West Austin Caregivers; and Eva Church of the Seton Home Health Care. I want to say welcome to the three of you. Delighted to have you here, and as I mentioned to you before the program, you've really been easy guests to have come to the program, and thanks for coming to Austin Faith Dialogue. Eva, we're concerned about the growing number of older adults in our society. We're all aging. We're all getting older, aren't we, Eva? That's a reality, is it not?
I'm afraid so.
Yeah, that's true. What are we going to do? What can we do to make sure that life is quality life? And how can we assist people? And what does your agency do?
Well, my agency helps to maintain dignity and a sense of independence in the home, in conjunction, I must say, with social services in the community, because there's a difference in just allowing a person to stay in their home and allowing them to stay there with a sense of dignity and independence. So we really focus on making sure that the patient and the caregiver have a sense of that they're able to take care of their medical needs, nutritional needs, functional needs, and that they have social services. So essentially that's the kind of program that we put together for the person and the family. And we have found that really the well-being of the patient very often depends on the well-being of the caregiver. And so and today there's so many people are trying to take care of children and trying to take care of older people in their family, their parents perhaps, and often maybe not even living in the same town, in the same home. So we have put together programs that will, respite programs and caregiver support programs that will help them be able to do that. Some of the programs we have are bed and bath and bed and breakfast, or a different mixture of that depending on the needs of that person, so that families can go to work and maintain their own careers and their own lifestyles without having to get up in the morning and take care of an older person and do their bed and bath.
If I'm concerned about an older adult in my life, and I'm not sure how to take care of my own professional needs, my nuclear family, and this this one I love and care for, this older adult, then what is the process? You mentioned it's to help them have quality life, to have dignity in life.
Yeah.
What is the process then with your agency? How does one go about receiving that type of assistance?
Well, it depends on the kind of care that you would need. If you just needed support in the home to maintain a certain kind of lifestyle, then you yourself could call in and say, I would like somebody to help give a bath to this person, or I would like to have help them to take care of their meals, or different things like that that would just help them to stay in the home. But if you needed, there was a skilled need, then a physician, of course, you'd probably be coming through a physician's orders anyway.
Eva, why encourage people to stay in their home? What is the advantage of staying in the home? What does that mean to you? I have my feelings about how I love to come home at night, but what about staying at home? Why is that an advantage?
Oh, I think it's very important that they grow old in the place that they grew old in, and that they maintain the kind of lifestyle that's important to them, that they can reminisce by themselves on the things that they did in their lives, and they have the people who care about them all around them. And I think that's very important, but it's also important that they can do it with a sense of dignity and independence, and that they're not feeling that everybody is helping them and upsetting other people's lives. So it's very important how it's put together, and not to have all the stress on their family. I think
as a parish pastor, I frequently hear people say, well, don't want to be a burden to my children, don't want to cause them difficulties, that type of thing. So your agency is able to provide assistance then to the person who is growing older, to give them some sense of dignity, allow them to stay in their place where their symbols are, that type of thing.
That's right.
And also then to be able to provide for them and their families. Do you also give them...
That's very important, I think, to be able to provide for the caregiver. And we have what we call our 48-hour weekend respite package. It doesn't necessarily have to be a weekend, where a companion will go into the home and take care of the older person, and then the caretakers can go away for 48 hours. So we developed that. Then we found that many of the caregivers were taking care of Alzheimer's patients.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a special training for the Alzheimer family, so that they would feel confident leaving their loved one with us, and we would feel confident too taking care of that other person, because sometimes it's frightening to some caregivers, and in fact to some staff members, to be taking care of an Alzheimer's patient. Mm-hmm. So we did some special got some special help from the Texas Department on Aging, and then our staff did some hands-on care at our special care geriatric psych unit at Holy Cross, and so that we feel we don't have an in-depth training in care of the Alzheimer's patient, but we do have how to react and interact with that person.
Encouraging people to face the aging process with a sense of courage and a sense of hope. Mm-hmm. That we can deal with this in a way that will bring quality to our lives. Let's talk to Harvey DeFord. Harvey, you're a volunteer with the West Austin Caregivers, and
that's right.
I'm wondering about how a good-looking man like you, retired individual, that's correct, is that right?
That's
CPA?
right. Uh-huh.
How did you happen to get involved with this West Austin Caregivers group?
Well, it's a funny thing in a way. My wife volunteered to go over to a program one time about an orientation on what West Austin Caregivers does. A friend of ours contacted her, and so she decided to go and listen, see if there's something we could do. She came back, she volunteered, and first call, she couldn't take the person to the doctor or whatever it was that was needed. And so I volunteered to go ahead and take that person to the doctor. And from that point on, I was a volunteer, and she was on the sideline watching. But she has volunteered some.
So you got into it right away. That first experience really got you kind of excited, and you decided, I want to be a volunteer.
Well, it's a real comfort to be able to do things for people who are in need of help.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing the fulfillment aspect that you get of this. It just helps you to know that you're in the process of helping someone else who needs help.
I want to pursue that with you, but I also want to ask you, Harvey, it seems to me that this is called Austin Faith Dialogue, and we talk to people who express their faith in a variety of ways. And we're coming out of the context of the religious community, and we're not embarrassed or ashamed by that. Matter of fact, we want to let people know that we are people of faith.
Sure.
As you express your faith in this way, where does that come from? What does that do to you? What kind of attitude do you receive from all of that?
Well, I guess it's a philosophy I've had that I've hoped that I have lived with for a long time. And this is that a person needs to give. We receive so much in life as we go along. I have received so many things from so many people, and somehow if I don't give back to someone else and fulfill a need to give to someone else after having received so much, I think I have not carried out my faith as an individual and as a Christian to be of help where I can.
Do you remember that old offertory hymn that we often sing, "We give thee but thine own, whate'er thy gift may be, all that we have is thine alone, a trust, O Lord, from thee."
Right.
And it seems to me we're not just talking about, you know, money. We're talking about an attitude towards life and a willingness to serve. If someone, well, let's come back and talk to you a little bit how that process goes with the West Austin Caregivers, all right, and how that happens. But let's introduce the lady who is head honcho, right? Director,
Okay.
your boss, so to speak. Well, I don't know if she'd like to be called that, but director of the West Austin Caregivers, Pat Rosenblatt. Pat, thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about West Austin Caregivers and how it started and the faith communities that are linked up in all of that.
Okay. West Austin Caregivers is a coalition of churches. It started back in late 1984. The Metro Ministries, which is now part of Metropolitan Ministries, Task Force for Older Adults, recognized this tremendous need of older people in the community. And I'll just sidetrack a little bit. We find this is such an unrecognized need. It's that they are kind of a neglected segment of our society, needing just a few support services in their own homes to, as Eva said, preserve their dignity and well-being and sense of security. So they recognized this need, and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation was giving some grants across the nation. So the Task Force for Older Adults with Metro Ministries applied for one of those grants. Well, we didn't get it, but San Antonio did. And Kathy Backus was the chair of that task force, and Carl Siegenthaler was an active member. The two of them, along with Frank Wright and other members of the task force, decided to go on and try to start small. So they selected West Austin because it had the highest percentage of older people, something like 15%. And they started out just information and referral, and soon it just built and caught on. Kathy served as the first director. She did it as a practicum. She really put a lot of time in that practicum. And now it has become such a successful program, and the older people have just joyfully responded to it. We've had wonderful volunteers like Harvey who have responded and seem to be very happy in that volunteer capacity. So the services have been replicated all across the community, and we still need more.
Give us an idea of how that goes. How many people contact you and how that works with the West Austin Caregivers?
Okay, in West Austin Caregivers, we are serving approximately 200 clients right now. And this is a large segment of West Austin, but it's not the far northwest or southwest. We are serving what I term the neglected segment of society oftentimes, because these are older people who need just a few little support services to enable them to function independently.
What are you talking about? Little support services?
Transportation is a biggie.
Oh, that's where Harvey fits into it, is that right?
Right. We serve the frail, the isolated, the homebound, and some who are not so frail, but they have some kind of health problem that prevents them from functioning as independently as they once did. And we find that whether it's a visual, sensory loss, or some other health problem, that oftentimes they find they can no longer drive. And that does more to curb a person's independence, I think, than we ever recognize.
The automobile is a symbol in our society for all of us.
It really is.
Freedom and ability to go where we want to go.
Right.
But there's an element of our society and also the process of aging which says that you are no longer able to drive. And so that says, I am homebound. I am caught here, trapped here. So transportation becomes a big issue for West Austin caregivers, right?
It's our most popular service, and we find it's the thing that is most likely to free them again and give them back some independence.
What if a person calls you, Pat, at the office, and your hours at the office are what?
9 to 1 weekdays.
Monday through Friday, 9 to 1. You are the staff person there, is that correct?
I'm the director. We also have a part-time secretary, and we try to have a volunteer in the office each day. In addition, we have a lot of phone calls.
All right, so someone calls in and they say, I will need on Friday this week someone to take me. Would there be someone available to take me to the bank? Would you be able to do that?
Yes, we do like a few days' notice. And what we do is take the information in the office and call a volunteer and get a volunteer lined up. We do a needs assessment before, well, not necessarily before we serve someone. If they need transportation that week and I can't get there to do a needs assessment, we'll go ahead and serve them. But we try to determine their needs and just get to know them a little bit.
In other words, in my vernacular as a parish pastor, you make a call on them, is that right? And you go and kind of listen to their history and what they're about, is that right?
Exactly.
Then if you said, as you looked at your staff and said, aha, I think we're going to call Harvey DeFord and see if Harvey would be able to provide transportation. I'm calling you on Monday, they want to go to the bank on Friday. What do you do then? You call up Harvey and say, Harvey, are you available on Friday? And he says, that's my day to go to the YMCA or something like that. How does that work out then? How does that
Well, that's one reason I think our volunteers like us, is because we're very flexible, and if they've got a busy schedule that week, all they have to do is tell us. We'll call another one, and we'll call them back another time.
Carl, usually they'll give us 2 or 3 options. For example, they say, I have someone who needs to go to see the doctor at 1:30 this afternoon, have someone who needs to go to the bank tomorrow at 2 or before it closes. And if you have 3 or 4 options like that, you can pretty well determine when you can go. And if you do have something that's conflicting, well, you can change your schedule a little bit. But normally I don't have to change the schedule. It fits in, and I make myself available.
I think you're that kind of guy that makes yourself available. Harvey, tell me, tell a story about some of the interesting experiences you've had when they've called you from the West Austin caregivers and said, would you provide transportation?
Well, most of the time you know that what you need to do. But one day I was called and I was told that a lady needed to go to the bank. And it was no particular time, just sometime during that morning. And so I went to the lady's home. It was in one of the apartments that the city owns that furnishes housing for people. And I met her at the door, and she had a little baggage carrier that was loaded down with a big bag about this high, it looked like, weighed about 50 pounds, and it was full of money, coins. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a hard time carrying this. But anyway, we got it into the car and carried it to the bank, and it was counted. And as soon as it was counted, she said, well, I need a vacuum cleaner because I don't have a place to clean my house. And so I took her on up to the place to get a vacuum cleaner. And believe it or not, the amount of money she had in the coin, a big package of coins, was just what she needed to buy the vacuum cleaner.
I believe it.
So,
I'm a believer.
I'm sure that she knew what she was up to.
You bet.
But it's that sort of thing. Most of the time, it's people who need to go to the doctor's office. I carry a magazine. I sit there. I know I have time to read, and that's when I get my reading in. So
wonderful stories. Eva, what do you think that home care offers to our community? We've heard Pat, we've heard Harvey, and I know something about the great work that you all do in your agency, but tell us, Eva, what's the benefit to our community? Austin's a caring community. We love our community, we love to live here, and we're faith people in it. What does it offer to our community to have agencies such as yours and these volunteers do this type of thing?
I think the main thing it offers is the fact that Seton Home Care has a sense of, is a professional agency, and it provides the professional, medical, nutritional, functional services that the patient needs. And then we also work very hard on providing other support services. But mainly many of them are done in conjunction with the West Austrian Caregivers and other community agencies as well, because we have a social worker on our staff, and part of the responsibility of that social worker is to make sure that by the time we have made that patient medically self-sufficient, that we also have in place social services so that that patient then can
All right,
take
so
care of
that's how
itself.
you would interact then with the West Austin
right,
caregivers,
right.
is that after that person is healthy, medically healthy, all right?
And nutritionally sound.
And nutritionally sound, then you see about the social dimension of their life, is that right?
That's right. And we do that almost from the beginning. As soon as we go there, we see what the needs are, and we start putting together a team of people who will make sure that that person can stay in her home in a dignified and safe way. You know, so we do a lot of community interaction, you know, with the different agencies and everything, putting together that kind of a package.
Do these senior adults that we're talking about, older adults, and I know many of them and love many of them in our parish community, don't they have something they can offer to our community? Isn't that a value? Isn't that a resource for our community to have these people in their homes and still participating in the flow of life? Don't you think, Eva?
I think it's a huge resource that we have, and it's one that for North Central Caregivers, when we begin that we will engage the youth and the old together. At St. Louis Church, I'm planning to ask, in fact, the youth ministry have offered that they would like to become involved and that they would like to help with visiting the older people, and they need that. They feel that they need that themselves.
You mentioned North Central Caregivers, and we want to talk about that in a few minutes, but let's first of all jump back to Pat and ask you then, how can we interface the young people who say, oh, I'm going to be young forever? How can we interface them with the older adults in our community so that both are blessed by that process? What could be done, do you think, Pat?
Well, I think we need a lot more education on the part of our whole society about the needs of older persons, but on the other hand, we have a lot of young volunteers who are really looking for a substitute grandparent. I had one call me not long ago, and she said, my grandparent lives in New York, and she's ill, and I can't be with her, and I can't help her. I would like to help someone else. So we paired her up with a lady who was alone and really, you know, is treasuring the companionship.
That's really interesting, Pat, because that means then we don't have to be, quote-unquote, retired people, Harvey, to be a part of the West Austin Caregivers or North Central Caregivers. We can be people of all ages. Is that correct, Pat?
Right. We have 80-year-old drivers driving 70-year-olds sometimes. Our volunteers come in all ages, from the young to the old.
That's really good to hear.
We have some really lively, involved with life and loving life volunteers who are older people.
You mentioned congregations support the West Austin Caregivers, and Eva, congregations are also going to be supporting the North Central
right.
Caregivers. But can people whose congregations or synagogues are not a part, or their house of worship is not a part of those congregationals' interaction, are we able to still be a part of the Caregivers unit?
Yes.
How do we, and we just call up and say, I'd like to be a part of it?
Well, the North Central Caregivers is being organized right now, as Eva mentioned, and what we have been doing, a whole committee of us have been contacting different churches and members of those churches and explaining the idea of the program, that that churches where one church cannot do very much alone, and churches, I believe, are recognizing the needs of older people and wanting to do something now, but it's impossible to do a thing like the transportation program we have, for example. in one little church.
Summertime,
Right.
when we have a lot of high school children out, and many of them probably do not know what to do or looking for something to do. This is an ideal time for them to get involved, and if you want to learn about history of Austin, the history of people and things, listen to these people talk to you.
They have something to share. Well, I want to
Really
thank
do.
the three of you. You're excited about what you do, and I thank you for being with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. And I invite you who are watching this program today to join us again next week as we continue to celebrate our community, Austin's 150th birthday, with a discussion on the life of O. Henry. Have a good summer. Blessings to you. Shalom.